read yet.
Well, I got quiet.
Want to share?
We're going to go ahead and call this commission meeting to order. So the first item this evening is going to be the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and glad to see everybody tonight. The next item this evening is going to be public comment. Mr. Dunham. And please just approach the podium, state your full name and your address for the record.
Kenneth Dunham, 1324 Hoover Road. I want to be here to thank the mayor on behalf of the Junction City Optimist Club for coming down on a real cold Saturday morning in the Walmart parking lot for a Harley Davidson Best Bike contest and all the other events that took place down there, and all the people that donated to the Children's Miracle Network. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you all for what you do as well. Mr. Delafuente? Just please approach the podium, state your full name and your address, please.
My name is Andrew De La Fuente, and my address is 129 East 7th Street. I was hoping to do this later, but I would like to call up Ariel, if I can, and I would like to thank her to kick off this Veterans Weekend by Junction City Tattoo donating a check that my kids made, $1,000 for your charity, and we appreciate you. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
you. Do you want me to hold it?
Please.
Where is this going towards?
It's going towards Women's Veterans Retreat in January.
There's one more gentleman. Gentlemen, why don't you come on up here? We can get the front, not the back. They look better from the front.
Yeah, come around. You can still come around. Coming through.
Come on up here.
And where do you want to go? Own it. Own it.
Get the back of our heads.
1, 2, and 3.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you so much. Next item this evening is going to be the consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Consent agenda carries. Thank you, 5-0. Now, next item this evening is going to be public hearing to consider the condemnation of property located at 1023 West 8th Street.
Madam Mayor, as you know, the City Commission early this summer set this for a hearing tonight on unsafe, dangerous structure. The purpose of the hearing is, first of all, to listen to Mr. Carmen explain to why he, as Building and Codes Inspector, head of that department, is recommending why this should be an unsafe or dangerous structure, unfit for human use or habitation. And of course, anybody else will have a chance to make comments to either contrary or in agreement as well about the building. At this point in time, the hearing is only to hear information. It's not to have a discussion about the length of time or days. Later on in the meeting, you will consider a resolution on the property, but at this point in time, it's strictly a matter of gaining information and allow a public hearing and not to have any really major discussion. You can ask some questions if you want anything refined, but the purpose of the hearing is strictly to gather information to make a decision later in the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a little background for you. As you know, we've had this project going for a while now. The reason it's being declared an unsafe structure, dangerous structure, there's a couple reasons. Still has only one utility. It has water. There's no gas. There's no electrical service attached as of today. A lot of the things we mentioned, touch base with 2-3 months ago, several times, still has not been completed and needs to be done to save this building or structure. And the next thing is it's unsecured. It's open to the public. So another reason, kids be in and out of it, people in and out of it. Somebody's been in it. I don't know. It may even be Mr. Ruiz, but somebody left it unsecured, back windows open. You can see from the pictures. Do I just, Jim, thumb through this?
Yeah, you can, or you can use the mouse, or I can flip through it if you.
You go right ahead. I broke it last time I touched it.
And for record, can you state your name and address, please?
Mark Carmen, I'm the code administrator for the Building and Code Department of the City of Junction City.
Okay, thank you.
It's basically pretty much in the same condition it was the last meeting that we talked about this subject. So there's not anything new been done to it. I don't know if Mr. Ruiz was aware, but the water was on and it's leaking there in the corner in that picture. That's a sheetrock that's in the same state it was 2 months ago. I mean, it could be done, but it has to be, you'd have to get on it. I mean, it's just setting the same way it was the last meeting that we talked about this. I have no progress to report.
And the last meeting was, I think, September 19th.
Correct.
And then before that, July 18th, I think there was some discussion about it. Is that,
That's what I have.
and no progress since any of those meetings?
The last thing that I can honestly say that I saw visibly saw done to the house was the paint. But as I spoke, when it was painted over some of the holes and things that I was asking needed to be repaired in the exterior wall covering. So I still would like to see the pictures too of that wall repaired. I have not seen those yet. And I don't have anything else to report. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Mark, I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
The south exterior wall, there's a window. Is the window been replaced yet?
No, but it's wide open. That's the bathroom. That's,
Okay.
yes, sir.
It's open.
Same window that was open last time.
Okay.
There is no electrical service to the building and no gas service to the building?
They have the line into the home, but there's no meter set for gas. The electrical service was rebuilt a couple months ago, and it is not fired up to as we speak today. If I'm not mistaken, because he's already had an inspection on the electrical service and the gas service, he could have them, they could be turned on right now. But at this state, it's not a habitable structure unless you have all three of your utilities. So it's really quite a ways from being habitable.
There has been an inspection done on the electrical service,
Yes, sir.
and it
passed.
passed.
It's got a new service that's today's up to current standards. Roy Vaughn Electric did that, so it was inspected probably 2 months ago,
Okay.
right after the last meeting.
With an electrical contractor who's established.
Yes, but he said he had nothing to do with the interior, so I still have that question. Speak on that when we get a little further down the road tonight.
Well, I'm curious, because we need to make a record here.
Sure.
So what electrical has passed and what
Just
hasn't
the
passed?
electrical service, Ms. Logan.
So
Just the service to be turned on, because we had to turn it down before. It had several deficiencies. It was too low, not the proper size, circuitry to it, not grounded properly, several things, so,
Or to the house, not the interior.
yes.
Okay,
And somebody else did the wiring, which I still have to ask those questions to Mr. Ruiz, because I haven't been contacted by anybody that said they did that work.
Is that a wire that's hanging?
Yes, sir. And the sheetrock wall's also got, the first picture's also got brand-new wiring in it too before it got covered up. I need to know who that licensed person was that did the work, otherwise that sheetrock needs to come off. Always call before you cover it.
Was there a mold problem too?
And that's why I'm asking for the pictures again from Mr. Ruiz that he claims that he, or says that he has, because I need to see them, because if you didn't do the proper mold remediation on this home, you're gonna either sell it to somebody, or you're gonna move somebody in here and rent, and then I'm gonna be contacted down the road because there's a mold problem, and we're gonna be right back to square one, and just taking the sheetrock off inside doesn't correct the problem. Taking that exterior that he put on, that I didn't get to see, or no one out of my office got to verify that it's done correctly, and the deteriorated product removed. I saw a pile of the debris, but I needed a picture of the wall that was rebuilt, not the debris. Those pictures don't do me any good because I can't see what he did.
Your determination is an unsafe structure. Okay?
Uninhabitable.
Excuse me?
Uninhabitable.
Both.
Okay. Public hearing is closed.
No.
No.
Ask if anybody else has
You have
any
to- Yeah.
Anybody else in the audience have any comments? Okay, please state your name and address, please.
Lawrence Ruiz, I'm the owner of the property, per se. I think the issue from the beginning has been between the city and the county. We were low bid at a auction, Mrs. Mayor, and till this day, they still don't have the proper paperwork. The reason I'm here tonight is I was served a certified letter to show up if I'm the owner, or if I have anything to do with that property. So that's the reason I'm here. Another piece of the puzzle is it's in litigation. The judge hasn't made a decision yet. So at this point, if it's tore down, the city pays for it. And then they pay for the house too if we win the case. The only thing I could do is fight for time, and hopefully I can get my paperwork and do what we're supposed to do. We had the water service turned on. We told the city over 2 months ago to change the whole unit, the valve and everything. And as you can see in the pictures, the reason the water's leaking is because there's a faulty valve. And it's almost impossible to turn the water off and on. They said they would do that, but from the pictures they haven't. That's why it's still leaking. We had electric service put in. We had the gas meters put in, and then, of course, we came to the commission's meeting, and then they condemned it. And from that time, it's just been a legal battle. I wasn't focusing on the house. I was focusing on the trying to get a fair hearing on it before they tear it down. So, I mean, our hands are tied. It's not our property, really. And if the city tears it down, then they pay for the demo, and they may be paying for the house too. Because by that time, I will have the paperwork. But the battle, and what's caused a lot of this, is miscommunication between the city and the county. Communication is very important. And in this instant, it wasn't there. And the paperwork, they're taking forever. Katie can attest to this, but we had 7 properties that was purchased during that auction. And during that meeting where it was condemned, still voted to be condemned, we still didn't have the paperwork. So I don't know what I'm fighting here. I came because I had a certified letter. I mean, the judge still has to rule on this. And, you know, if you don't tear it down, then there's no inference. If you tear it down, then there's a possibility the city will not only pay for the demo, but they'll have to pay for the building.
Do you guys want a response to that part now?
Sure.
In the county, in the lawsuit with the county, that was determined, and it was reported to you before the July 18th meeting, and a deed was recorded on August 1st.
So the property has been titled in the name of the company that he sought to have the property titled in since August 1st.
Well, that's nice to know because nobody sent me a deed, nobody called me, miscommunication.
Would have gotten the same
Yes,
information we did.
you're the one that gave me a copy.
The only thing I got, God is my witness, is that one sheet of paper, certified mail. I didn't get a blight, I didn't get anything.
You had several blights on that property.
No, sir. No, sir. It wasn't sent to, it was after, that's after.
It's not up for debate tonight. There's
I understand that, but since you brought up blight and you brought up some, what do you call it, blight expenses toward us, yes, I need to explain that too, because there's another $400 or $500 in blight, and I'm like, for what?
pictures.
For property that you're going to condemn, that we don't even know if what am I supposed to do? I'm straddling the fence, but, you know.
So, Mark, let me.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Ruiz was represented by counsel in the county lawsuit, and the county provided us, the county filed a lawsuit to set aside the tax sale on this and some other properties that we don't, aren't subject to the action tonight, but on this property and some others. And the judge, Mr. Ruiz, was represented by outside counsel in that case, and the judge ruled, it actually issued an order in that case denying the motion to set aside, meaning the sale to the entity Mr. Ruiz owns is valid. And that was on, the order was issued on June 19th of this year. The county provided the city with a copy of it. And we talked about that at the July 18th meeting. But at that time, Mr. Ruiz indicated to the governing body that he had not received a deed yet, and we didn't know one way or the other, and, decisions of court can be appealed. So, because it was still up in the air at that time, he decided to, wait. Then on August 1st, on July 28th, he filed the lawsuit against the city to ask the court to prevent you from going ahead and demolishing the property. And then on August 1st, a deed from the county, a sheriff's deed from the county to Mr. Ruiz was recorded. We don't know who recorded it, but it's of record. So he's had title to the property since August 1st.
I don't believe I have title to the property. I have to see it.
My guess is he filed the deed. I don't think the county would file the deed. I think the county would deliver the deed to the buyer at the tax sale.
Who filed the
Expect
deed?
The person to record it. Now, the deed itself doesn't say who delivered it to the recorder of deeds office recording, but.
And if that's the case, in retrospect, there's a big old write-up again. 1023 owes taxes, and it didn't say my name on it. So how could that be the case? I think there's another ambiguity here.
Well, he's always trying to create ambiguities to delay, what needs to be
And you're always
done.
trying to divert the truth.
Do you have anything else, sir?
No, ma'am.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Oh, we did, Mark Carmen's office was kind enough to give us an extension. We have windows that's going in there, and we've already got our cabinets and everything all set up. But you can see there's several issues. I need to focus on fixing the house, I agree. But there's just too many things still going on with it.
Mr. Reyes, I do have a question. Why have you bought cabinets if you don't own the house?
I just did it
Just
so
told me
I
a
can
few
come to
seconds
the
ago-
commission and say that I've got them in the interim while we're waiting for this paperwork. We've done nothing wrong here. We're trying to beautify the city, keep from having another empty lot. Pure and simple.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did want to clarify one thing, the water leaking inside the home, that's a property owner issue. That's something that could be fixed with a 59-cent washer. That has nothing to do with Public Works or the city, because we don't continue to have pressure against something. I mean, it obviously leaks because there's a faulty part, and it's inside the structure. We're responsible from the meter in, that's it.
That's it.
From the main to
From the
meter.
main, excuse me.
Main to the
The
meter.
main to the meter. The rest of that is privately owned from the meter in, homeowners.
I'd like also to point out that when Mr. Ruiz filed the lawsuit against the city, he alleged that he was the owner of the property. And he filed that lawsuit on July 28th, so at least by then, he felt that he or the company he owned was the owner of the property.
And also for clarification, the city clerk sent 3 certified letters one to Mr. Reyes, one to Quality Trust, and one to
Riverfront,
Riverfront.
I believe.
LLC, which
He
is,
also claimed in an early meeting that he's had $10,000 invested in it, and if you do, why would you invest that much money if you don't own it? I would have to wait till I did.
We had to fix the roof to remediate any problems.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ask for more comments. Ask if
Close
there's
the
more
public.
comments.
if anybody else in
Okay.
the audience.
Does anybody else have any comments? Okay, then we'll go ahead and close that public hearing, and thank you. We're going to move on to the next item this evening, and that's going to be some special presentations. I have 3 proclamations to read this evening. So the first one is going to be proclamation declaring November the 10th, 2017 as the Extra Mile Day in Junction City by the mayor. So I asked a few folks to come tonight that I feel really do go the extra mile in Junction City. And I'm going to ask them to come up. And it's some of our young citizens that live in Junction City. So if I could get the girls, Nalacia, I'm going to tear y'all's name up, so I'm sorry. Melania, Nalia, Dustin, and Sarah, and Kathy, and Mom, if you want to come up too, you can. But all of these folks, just about every time I set up a community cleanup project in our community of Junction City, I can count on them to show up to help. And I think that's really, really awesome. So not only is this proclamation for them, but it's for everybody in our community that really does go the extra mile. We really do have a lot of people in the community that go that extra mile, but these are some of our young citizens that are learning from all of us and making a big difference. So I appreciate all of y'all. So I'm going to read this proclamation. So the Extra Mile Day by the City Commission of Junction City, Kansas, proclamation, whereas Junction City, Kansas is a community which acknowledges that a special vibrancy exists within the entire community when its individual citizens collectively go the extra mile, whether it's in personal effort, volunteerism, and service, and whereas Junction City, Kansas is a community which encourages its citizens to maximize their personal contribution to the community by giving of themselves wholeheartedly and with total effort, commitment, and conviction to their individual ambitions, family, friends, and community. And whereas Junction City, Kansas is a community which chooses to shine a light on and celebrate individuals and organizations within its community who go the extra mile in order to make a difference and lift up fellow members of their community. And whereas Junction City, Kansas acknowledges the mission of Extra Mile America to create 575 plus extra mile cities in America and is proud to support Extra Mile Day on November the 10th, 2017. Now therefore, I, Mayor of Junction City, Kansas, do hereby proclaim November the 10th, 2017 to be the Extra Mile Day. I urge each individual in the community to take time on this day to not only go the extra mile in his or her own life, but to also acknowledge all those who are inspirational in their efforts and commitment to make their organizations, families, community, country, or world a better place. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and calls the seal of the city of Junction City, Kansas to be affixed the 7th day of November 2017. So I'll file this and we keep it on record here. And just want to again publicly acknowledge the efforts of our young citizens in our community for all that y'all do. So I thank you guys so very, very much. We could do that. Okay, and this next proclamation is declared November 2017 as the National Adoption Month in Junction City. National Adoption Month Proclamation. To the people of Junction City, greetings. Whereas the state of Kansas recognizes the importance of giving children permanent, safe, and loving families through adoption. And whereas today in the United States, there are more than 110,000 children who need a loving adoptive family. And whereas today there are approximately 450 Kansas children who are waiting to be adopted, an increase of approximately 100 children from last year. And whereas some children who wait the longest for an adopted family are those who have suffered abuse and or neglect and may have medical, emotional, and or developmental needs. And whereas brothers and sisters who are separated in the foster care system yearn to be adopted by the same family. And whereas many older youth in foster care feel they may be too old to be adopted, yet they want a sense of belonging that adopted parents can provide. And whereas adoption brings unique opportunities to forever transform a child's life and enrich the life of the adoptive parent or family who welcomes them. And whereas the state observes Sunday, November the 12th, 2017 as Adoption Sunday, a time for faith-based organizations to call upon members to consider adoption or support families who have adopted children from foster care. Whereas the state observes Saturday, November 2017 as National Adoption Day, a day to raise adoption awareness with policymakers, practitioners, and advocates working together to finalize adoptions. Now, therefore, I, Phyllis Fitzgerald, Mayor of Junction City, do hereby proclaim November 2017 as National Adoption Month in Kansas, in the hopes that the people of this great state will open their hearts and homes to Kansas kids in the foster care system. Thank you. The last proclamation this evening is going to be for declaring November 2017 as Veterans and Family and Military Families Month in Junction City. So I ask any veteran or veteran family to please come tonight. If y'all would please come up while I read this proclamation, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for coming out this evening as well. Kind of long, so. Yeah, I'm talking as fast as I can. Veterans and Military Families Month Proclamation. I know, you should come up to your. The Junction City community has a rich history as the home of Fort Riley and the home of many who live in our city, who have served to protect our nation as a member of the United States Armed Forces. Those who are serving and those who have served to protect our country are valuable citizens of Junction City and the Central Flint Hills. During National Veterans and Military Families Month, we honor the significant contributions made by American service members, their families, and their loved ones. We set aside this month surrounding Veterans Day to hold observances around the country to honor and thank those whose service and sacrifice that represent the very best of America. We renew our nation's commitment to support veterans and military families. They deserve it. Our veterans are our heroes. Our armed forces have preserved the security and freedom that allow us to flourish as a nation. They have braved bitter winters, treacherous jungles, barren deserts, and stormy waters to defend our nation. They have left their families to face danger and uncertainty, and they have endured the wounds of war, all to protect our nation's interests and ideas established during the founding. Our military families endure many hardships, along with those who defend our nation. They are separated from their loved ones for months on end and frequently relocated across the country and around the world. They often live far from their extended families, and they know what it is like to celebrate holidays and milestones with an empty seat at the table. Many military spouses face the task of making ends meet while their loved ones are away and of securing new employment with each change of duty station. Children of service members often grow up living a nomadic life, periodically calling a new place home and adjusting to different schools, trying out for new sports teams, and making new friends. In these lives of frequent change and transition, however, our incredible military families not only survive, they thrive. This month, in which Americans traditionally pause to give thanks for our blessings, it is fitting that we come together to honor with gratitude our extraordinary veterans and military families and their service to our country. May God continue to bless our armed forces and those families that love and support them. Now therefore, I, Phyllis Fitzgerald, Mayor of the City of Junction City, proclaim November 2017 as National Veterans and Military Families Month in Junction City. I encourage all members of our community to acknowledge and honor the service, sacrifices, and contributions of veterans and military families for what they have done and for what they do every day to support our great nation. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
She wants to get, all right. Yeah. November 11th.
And they get their maximum pay.
Down to the Legion for a 3 prime.
Because here's
Hope you
why,
eat good.
Yeah, you will.
it says,
No, you're great.
time is earned each pay period. Here. But that's only if they're working.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
But it's not straight away, but it doesn't say.
The only thing I'm gonna do tomorrow is just to kind of see what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because for some reason I don't know the answer to that one.
I think it's no.
Thank you all for what you do and what you continue to do.
Oh, you're right. Just did his payout.
All right.
Right, I'm sorry. But then I realized that his wasn't turned off, so then that made me go, oh crap, was I not supposed to do that? Well, that's what I was given.
Thank you all so much for those listening to the proclamations. The next item we're going to do this evening before we move into new business is we just want to show a video that was on WIBW, I believe it was yesterday. One of our Junction City police officers was interviewed, and we have a nice video of that interview, and it's just an example of our police officers, our force that we have here, and the great job that not only he, but all of our police officers in Junction City do every day. So, Jim, if you could start that, please.
How much have you had to drink tonight? Nothing? That wasn't a very confident nothing.
Officer Kyle Hagan has an eye for spotting drunk drivers.
On 1044, 100 Lost West 6, Silver Ford Focus.
So far this year, the Iowa native has 25 DUI arrests to his name.
You know what the legal driving limit in the state of Kansas is? 0.08. All right, you're 0.182. Okay, so we're going to be personally arrested for DUI.
DUI accidents are 100% preventable. Even though people, make a poor choice or make a bad choice to get behind the wheel once they've, been drinking and are not safe to operate, there's so many other options out there other than driving.
1015, one adult male en route to 44, further testing.
Hagan's commitment to keeping Junction City streets safe is deeper than just his duty as an officer. There's also a personal side to his passion as well. Prior to joining JCPD, Hagan spent more than 8 years in the military. The final stint of his service brought him to Fort Riley, Kansas, where he met Staff Sergeant Joe Cunningham. Sadly, their friendship was cut short by tragedy.
We were doing formation, and I got a call from one of my soldiers asking if it was true.
Cunningham died August 7, 2014 in Glenville, Georgia. The father of 4 was killed after a drunk driver crossed the center line and struck his car head on.
I guess every time I find a DUI or something, he's always in the back of my head.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. All right, go up, stop.
As a husband and father of 2, Hagan says cases involving children remind him of his own. He says fixing issues with juveniles can be the most complex, rewarding, and baffling part of his job.
I found a 4-year-old about 4 o'clock in the morning, walking down the sidewalk with no shoes on, it wasn't cold, but it was a chilly night. He had on short sleeves, shorts, no shoes.
Well, it's okay, it's okay. Everything's gonna be all right.
Found out that he got out of bed and just walked out of his apartment, trying to find his mom. So we were able to find her and get them reunited again.
What are you doing?
Whether on duty or off, Junction City Police Captain Keith Fitzgerald says that Officer Hagan always holds himself to the highest standards.
He tries to live his life in that very manner, that when people see him, he's always doing the right thing and continues to be compassionate toward the population.
It's a calling Hagan's had since he was a young boy.
I grew up, my parents watched Walker, Texas Ranger a lot, and just for the longest time, can't think of anything else that I wanted to be more than a police officer.
With photojournalist Rick Felsberg, Chris Fisher, 13 News.
Thank you, Jim, for putting that up for us. Chief, did you have anything you want to add to that? Okay. Thank you, but it's just another example of, we have a fantastic law enforcement here with Junction City Police Department and great officers. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next item this evening. That's going to be under new business. And the first item this evening is a consideration of resolution number R 2831 declaring 1023 West 8th Street as an unsafe and/or dangerous structure unfit for human use or habitation. Mr. Corman.
I don't have much more to add to the public hearing, so I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. I believe Mr. Ruiz left.
He does have a valid building permit right now, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, sir, but a permit there again does not excuse them from.
From doing the work.
Yes.
But he has everything in place to where he can go to work on it tomorrow if he wants to.
Yeah, and then he could have had the utilities on a long time ago, right after that last meeting we had, and I'm like Mr. Dinkle, I sure as heck wouldn't have cabinets lined up if I wasn't gonna invest this money in this house till I was sure it was mine.
Does he have to have a licensed electrician come in and check the interior of the structure before he turns the power on?
Yes, and that's what the point I was driving home is I've made that abundantly clear every time we come here, the things that I have found problems with it and what's going to happen if we have to go backwards is you have to take wall covering off and you have to take the exterior wall covering off so I can verify, because that pile of debris in the picture could have been trash you took from the outside, threw out there on the ground.
And the gas lines, they have to be tested before that's turned on too now?
That already has, but there again, he could have it on tomorrow, but I don't know why he doesn't. If I were going to try and keep it as a habitable structure, I'd be in there working on it and the heat on it right now to get the sheetrock mud to dry.
He probably wants to put the windows in right now.
Yes, I'm sure he is.
They're not here yet.
So is there a furnace in that structure? I didn't see one in the pictures.
There is somewhere, but when I go into a home, most of the time if it's unoccupied like that or it's unsecured, if there's possibly somebody in there, we call the PD and have them go in for us. I don't want to get into an altercation or any type of deal, so, but I did walk through this one. I didn't see a furnace. I don't know where it must be in the attic, a downflow or something, because I can't see it. I was more cautious about somebody being around the corners when I walked in there than I was looking for the furnace. I would assume should have been in the same room the water heater was in.
Would have thought.
I mean, that's typical, you know.
Yes.
Yep.
Just checking.
We had suggested a 30-day Katie, you might want to add your comments you made to me this afternoon, just so
Yeah.
the commission hears them.
Yeah, so here, I'm going to give you a quick timeline if you want to hear it, because I think it's relevant to your decision. On August 16th, 2016, you brought a resolution forward to, Mark brought a resolution forward to consider holding a public hearing. And at that time, you had identified, because they were owners of record, 2 other people.
Correct.
All the notices had gone to those people, a Vivian Mooney and a Sanford Williams.
Yes, on Rockledge Drive here.
Yeah, who were the owners of record. And on September 20th, 2016, you held a public hearing. And the minutes of that meeting on your website reflect that Mr. Ruiz was present at that meeting, and that was the first time, at least to the governing body, he came forward and said, well, I actually, purchased that property at a tax sale. So we were all kind of a little confused, but nevertheless, the resolution to hold a public hearing was approved, because that's all you're doing at that meeting. So that was on September 20th, 2016. Oh, and on September 20th, the public hearing was held on September 20th, 2016, and you gave a certain amount of time to fix it. And Mr. Ruiz was present. And at that time, he was telling us, well, I really own the property, but I just don't have title yet. Then in April of 2017, you came forward and asked for approval to solicit bids for demolition. And the minutes don't reflect whether Mr. Ruiz was present or not at that meeting, and there's no video of that meeting on the website. On May 2nd, you brought forward the bids.
He was here for that.
On May 2nd of 2017, you sought approval of the bids.
To accept a low bid.
And Mr. Ruiz was present at that meeting. And again, at that meeting, he asked for you to give him till August to complete the repairs, because he had a building permit that gave him till August. And once again, he said he was the owner, but he didn't have the legal papers yet. And you had kind of gotten some information in the meantime that perhaps he did,
Yeah,
actually purchase the property.
Right, and there was a snag in it, but that has, like you said, since been resolved.
Right. So then at the next meeting of May 16th, Mr. Ruiz spoke during the public comment section of that meeting and indicated that he had retained an attorney, and there actually, was a lawsuit pending regarding who owned the property. And so because of that additional information, we decided to kind of postpone making a decision. Yeah, that was on May 16th. And the thought was we'd wait about 60 days to, see how the ownership of the property, fell out in the lawsuit. Then and I wrote him a letter on May 17th to tell him, because we have, confirmed with the county that the ownership of the property actually is in litigation, the city commission has agreed to wait a few months before it decides to move forward or not, but be aware that if the property is determined to be in your name, we're still moving forward because you're not doing anything. Then on June 29th, the court, in his lawsuit with the county, issued its order saying he should get his company should get the property. I got a copy of that on July 10th, but the city may have had it sooner. Sarah Graham sent it to me on July 10th. And so the meeting that you had deferred the decision on what to do, on whether to accept the demolition bid, that next meeting was July 18th. And Mr. Ruiz was present at that meeting. I'm sure at that meeting, the minutes aren't all that detailed, but at that meeting, I'm sure I reported to you that the court had ruled in his favor in that lawsuit. And you actually decided at that meeting to go ahead and award the bid to I think it was Carmen Excavating.
Pearson.
Excuse me, Pearson
Pearson Excavating.
And so that was July 18th. 10 days later, you hadn't moved forward yet
No.
because they didn't have time.
Well,
to.
we were waiting on utilities to be disconnected.
Yeah, so 10 days later, on July 28th, he filed the lawsuit against the city, and in that lawsuit, he alleged that, he or Riverfront owned the property. And when we checked, I asked you to check, once we got a letter notifying the city that a lawsuit had been filed, or notifying me, not properly notifying the city, you sent somebody to the Recorder of Deeds office, and there was a deed that was, in fact, from the county, the sheriff, to him, as you'd expect in a foreclosure sale, recorded on August 1st. Then I believe his original building permit expired in August,
August 17th, yes.
but then he's recently renewed it,
Just
or gotten a new one.
2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
Let's see,
An
would have been Thursday.
Yeah, an
Got
extension.
an extension.
So,
6-month intervals.
so
But the extension is only good till, what Sarah gave me, February 28th?
Yeah, something like that. It's-
28th.
I'd have to look at the date on it again, but it was issued last Thursday, so it'd be 6 months from the day. That'd be about right.
Why was the permit extended?
28th, 27th.
He came in and asked for an extension on it to finish the project, was his claim. I was not actually in the office Thursday when he did it. It's typical to extend permits if there's activity going on. There hasn't been any activity whatsoever on this job for more than 2 months. And if I had invested the money he had invested for what he paid to get the property, he could have been done with siding, windows, doors, the whole 9 yards by now. And that-
So if that permit expired August the 17th, and he's just now coming to get an extension on it?
Yes.
That's a couple months of,
Yes. It's not something we do typically, but staff, I had to clarify, you have to actually ask for an extension in writing. So he would have had to have clarified to me, but that's beyond us now.
I would have think he would, I just mean, I would
Yeah.
think he would have came before it expired.
Well, that's kind of what I thought too, Mayor. I mean, I would have, or if he'd have came in 2 weeks even after hey, I forgot that thing expired, I need to extend it, but it's 2 months later. It's another way to wrangle us from not going forward, in my opinion.
So at previous meetings, part of his argument was that he didn't ever, he never received the appropriate formal notices because the prior hearings notices were sent to the prior property owners, which is true. I mean, it's ingenuous to say he didn't know about it because he was at the meetings, he appeared and he heard everything that happened, but it's technically true that the prior notices went to someone else because someone else was the owner of record. So that's why you might recall we recommended at the September 19th meeting that we kind of start over again. Let's adopt a new resolution, and we have the Riverfront LLC, but out of an abundance of caution, because that's the owner of record, we sent all our notices to both Mr. Ruiz, to Quality Trust, and to Riverfront, because they're all, their names have all been floated around as having an interest. And so now here we are on November 7th having the public hearing. You can take action tonight. You should take action tonight on, if you're going to, once again, require the property owner to take the steps necessary to either, repair the property or demolish it. There's plenty of evidence before you that it's not habitable and it's a dangerous building. The question is now, how much time do you give him? How much more time do you give him? Because in my mind, just from a legal standpoint, if we're starting over again, even though we know he's had notice of this, is it more defensible if you're back in court to give him the amount of time that you would have given him if this was the first time he came before you? That would be the easiest argument to make to a judge or a jury if you got sued over this, as opposed to giving him a shorter time, because you can say, well, he knew about it. So that's the thing I want you to think about.
And on the city's behalf, I would argue that he waits till the last minute to do anything possible to stop these proceedings.
I agree with that, but I'm just saying these are the things you'd be arguing to a court.
What time frame are you talking about?
Well, I don't know, I put it on, if he started tomorrow and were diligent.
If he started tomorrow and we're diligent, he could do it in 30 days, but 60, anybody could do that.
You got a couple things
Yet we
happening
gave
here.
him 6 months extension.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go that long.
No, I
I
wouldn't.
recommend
I
you would
wouldn't
not.
I
either.
wouldn't, I just don't know if 30 is too short, because I don't know enough about the property.
But I would, and I don't want to argue with the city attorney, but if the 12th is the date, yeah, December 12th,
That's what you.
December 12th is what we have recommended here. At the following commission meeting, which would be December 19th, Mark would ask permission to send for bids. We now move into doing bids by mid-January, 2-3 weeks, whatever
Yeah,
the
by
normal
the time you
process to get
schedule it.
bids to tear it down. So the commission would not then address bids on probably until January,
The second meeting.
the second meeting, which is going to be January
Whatever.
16th.
Yeah.
So in just that alone is 60 days. And arguably, just because you send out for bids on shortly after the December 19th meeting, and on January the 5th, Mark would say, well, we sent out for bids, but hey, it got done. Commission, I recommend you accept no bids, we move on.
It's December 12th meeting.
December 12th. So what we've done is when I say 30 days, you're actually going to be closer to 60 to 75, just in the practical process. Yeah.
So if you're saying then during that time frame of the bids and everything, that he continues to work on that property, he could get it up to the standard.
And Mark, we say the 30 days, but, and again, if Mark could come here on the 19th of December and say,
12th.
well, 12th's the day, but the commission meeting's on the 19th.
Oh, okay.
So Mark's gonna come on the 19th and go, you know what? He really got to it. He's 90% done. I recommend we wait to bid it out. I mean, we have that option in there too.
Yeah.
So you got some proof of performance in there, which that's where I come from, is that if Mark sees on December 12th that nothing's been done, we can move forward with it. I think we've met that requirement. So I do believe there's enough time given there. His having permit till February 28th,
It's too long.
just because I get a permit for 6 months doesn't mean I need all 6 months.
Right, and I wasn't
You know,
recommending
yeah,
that,
yeah.
but I was bringing it up to partly make sure we have the discussion about, let's not give him, a week if it's impossible for him to do it.
No,
in a
it's
week.
a
Let's
week's
give him
not possible,
A period
but
of time that
there's
would be
really
possible for him to comply.
There's really not that much work that a person couldn't do this work by themselves in the evenings and be done in 30 days. But you have to do the work. You have to be there and do it. But he still has to call the qualified people to verify the electrical safe.
And regardless what date you set, this resolution will be published in the paper, and we'll send certified copies to all three entities again, just as we did the last one, to cover all bases. Because the argument on the purchasing is according to Kansas State statute, delinquent taxpayer cannot buy tax property.
Yeah, the argument in that case was that he basically had a shell company.
He used one firm to buy the other.
Because,
Quality Trust owes back taxes.
Yes.
Riverfront does not. Yet they have the same.
Still the same
Corporate
president,
structure.
yeah.
So if we were to agree to this 30-day line in the sand, I suppose, could we just make that to December 19th and eliminate one of the processes here? Because
On the 19th, Mark would then come at.
Mark would say it's thumbs up or down, and we'd make a decision at that time to go for bids.
I think that'd be a good move.
Right.
I would use the 18th because
Yeah,
that way
the
we
day
don't
before
have,
the meeting.
that way it's done prior to the meeting.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
I think it's a
Gotcha.
good
If we
idea.
wait till the bottom line, yeah,
Gotcha.
it could be an interesting meeting that night.
And whatever we decide on, Mr. Ruiz will get notified of that
He will
action
get,
if
Yes.
he's not
he'll
here
get,
now.
As he has the
we'll
last.
send the 3 certified letters as she did last time, one to
Yes.
each of the, one to Larry S., one to Quality Trust, one to Verify the LLC, Quality Trust LLC too. And she'll also put it in the paper to be published this week.
Certified letter good enough?
Yeah, it's what the statute requires,
Okay.
so it is good enough.
Okay. I didn't
And
know if
the-
it needed to be delivered by the sheriff.
And publication.
We
Okay.
could
Yeah, but
do
you
that.
better videotape it being placed in his hand. Maybe one of the fancy cameras we bought for the police officer department could videotape that possibly.
We can't
Since he's never
handle it,
received any notification whatsoever since the beginning of time.
except he signed for all 3 of these.
Well, and that's what I didn't understand. How did he have
Signed for all 3
representation
that
and
Shauna
not
sent to
know?
him in
The
September.
representation
I
would
know, it's,
tell you you
Yeah.
won or
All
lost.
right, let's keep going.
I move to approve Resolution R 2831 to give the property owner until December 18th to show good cause of repair or removal of the structure at 1023 West 8.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Next item this evening is going to be a letter of support for the Flint Hills Regional Council application for a grant with the United States EPA to assess brownfield properties.
Good evening. I'm Gary Stith, Director of the Flint Hills Regional Council. We're working with a consultant on an application which has to be submitted to the EPA by November 15th, so we're on a short time frame. We're asking several jurisdictions in our region to support this grant application and also to indicate that they would be willing to serve on a coalition, specifically asking that you would appoint someone on your staff to participate in this coalition that would be kind of the guiding group for the process once we get the grant. The grant is for $600,000. It's a 100% grant, which is extremely unusual, so there's no match requirement. So there's no obligation on any of the jurisdictions to provide any kind of funding as a part of this process. We wouldn't find out about the grant until next spring, and we wouldn't actually be able to draw down funds until next August. The wheels of the federal government turn slowly. But we feel like what this does is it allows us to assess properties for determining if there is any kind of contamination on the property, particularly looking at petroleum, dry cleaning fluids, but it also could cover things like asbestos or lead-based paint even. Once the assessment is made, then there would be a plan for mitigation. How do you clean it up? And once that, and then additionally, there would be a part of the plan that would say, okay, here's ways this property could be reused. I think that's the most important part as far as I'm concerned, because what that indicates is an opportunity for economic development in the reuse of the property, which frequently the property's use is limited because of the contamination. So it's a good process. Once we have that completed and there's a mitigation plan, we can then apply for a EPA grant to actually clean up the property. Now, this can be private properties or public properties. Of course, if it's private, the private property owner would have to agree to this. But if we can get the grant to do the cleanup, it actually makes their property more valuable. So it would be a good thing for the property owner to participate in this. So what we're asking tonight is a letter of support for the grant application that we would be making, and that you would indicate that you want to participate as a part of this coalition. Are there any questions?
I just have one question. How will you determine, or how's the determination made of something that's brownfield? Or is there like a team that's going to be
The consultant that's helping us write the grant, they're actually doing this on a contingency. If we get the grant, then they would be the consultant that would do the work. They did this last year with the city of Topeka. The city of Topeka got the grant, and now this consultant is working with the city of Topeka to go through the process of identifying properties. As a part of the application, they have to identify focus areas, not specific properties, but areas where they think there's an indication that there could be properties that are contaminated. And they've already told me that there are 2 areas in Junction City that they would want to evaluate. One is the industrial area to the east of downtown area, and the other is up on Grant Avenue. So, and if you have any other suggestions of areas that we might want to look at, well, we'd appreciate that too. But they do feel like that Junction City has some areas of focus that they would include in the grant application.
And just one additional thing, Junction City's been a recipient of a brownfield already off of Old 40 down by the Ventura Science. That area there was a recipient of a brownfield. So Junction City has one credited to them. I think this is a great opportunity to clean up some of those areas, and you can't beat 100% match.
No.
Move forward with it.
Is this only commercial?
On commercial properties?
Yes.
No.
Residential as well?
It could include residential,
include.
yes.
I'd move to approve the letter of support.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Nothing here.
And for clarification, this will be the letter that you received today. Gary did an update this morning.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary.
Next item, are we still going with C, Alan?
Yeah, I'll have Chief explain. This item here has been, the county sent a agreement to us to look at. Our city attorney made corrections or suggestions, at least, in the agreement to Mr. Opat last Wednesday. As of today, we have not heard anything from the county attorney. So I'll let Chief Brees at least talk about this a little bit, but I'm going to recommend no action taken tonight until we hear back from the county.
Mr. Dinkle, is this the one on the ITT person? The next one on the agenda?
No,
Okay.
this is the IT agreement with, to
The
hire,
info
the-
technology
to
agreement.
hire the
with-
person.
It's
Okay.
item C,
Okay,
consideration. and vote.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, I come before you tonight to talk to you about an agreement to establish guidelines, responsibilities, and terms governing the integration of the new public safety system, New World, by the City of Junction City, Geary County. The integration of the New World Public Safety System requires that the City of Junction City and Geary County maintain efficient and sufficient information technology personnel. In this agreement, the City of Junction City will retain its responsibility for maintaining the position of IT Director, and Geary County will establish the position of Information Technology Technician. Funds for this hiring of this info tech would be paid for from asset forfeiture, and it would be paid half by the Sheriff's Department and half by the Police Department.
So I'll interject here. So this agreement came to me last week, and I had Tammy Samoji, who's because it involves the concept of possibly a partially joint employee. We looked it over because there were some problems with that concept previously, and we marked the agreement up, not to try to change the duties or even the costs, but to revise it in a way fairly substantially that would structure it differently so that would be more beneficial to both the city and the county, I believe. And we just didn't get comments back, and they were fairly substantial changes. So I would suggest that we at least table it till the next meeting. So I sent it over, I think by the time we'd marked it up and I sent it over to Mr. Opat, it was probably Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
So.
And when Chief Breesy brought this to me initially, we have had discussion with County Sheriff, even back in the Chief Brown days, with the need for more staffing of IT people, because a large amount of the business we do, and Jim and Mike do a great job, is just they have a lot to do. A year ago, the county sheriff says, don't let money be an issue. So Jim and I met with him May of last year, May, June, and it was Chief Brown yet too. And the county says, no, we don't want to put any money in. So we just let it ride. Now they came back and pushing forward. So long-term, adding a third person for the funding is not a bad thing because, like I said, Jim and Mike do a rock star job, but just there's a lot of things happening with all the data and information and everything else that we have. And you got to realize that, this also includes the IT system for the sheriff office, the jail, I believe, and Grandview PD.
That's correct.
Okay, so we're doing more than that. So the whole structure is a good idea. It's just that we received no comments back from the county yet, so that's why I would want to wait.
So you can use those funds for a budgeted position? Or
Initially, yes.
Initially.
Our plan was to get this person on board now. We found a person that we think is qualified to do it. And we are in the middle of about 2.5 years into a RMS project, records management, on this new world. And we're 6 months behind. And I'm going to talk to you right after this about our next proposal to try to get this project fully implemented, which we are now pushing to April of next year. We thought we would go live early this year, and we just didn't have the right people. We didn't realize how much stuff had to be done. Our consultant out of Abilene had another October 1. She had committed to some other project, so we lost that person. And so we're the longer we push it, the more money it keeps costing us because they keep having to come back to retrain. And so we're hoping this is the third push. We were supposed to go live the first week of October. Now we're hoping for April, but it takes a lot of manpower and the right IT people in there every day to help us out.
Chief Reese, I had a couple of questions. Reading it sounded like a great concept. Parent companies out of Topeka for this?
No.
No, two separate agreements. This one here is item C. Item D, that person, which was Mr. Drake, is from Topeka.
Okay.
So, two separate issues.
Okay.
You're spot on, but.
They work well together.
Yes.
And they will, I get,
Yeah.
I'd recommend item C to be tabled until the next meeting, or until we hear back from the county.
So move.
We need to vote on that or anything?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a motion.
Okay, I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any further discussion?
None here.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Table to the next meeting or whenever. Next item this evening is going to be item D, consideration of the consultant agreement with Gary County Sheriff's Department and Justin Drake for the Records Management System Project. Chief Reese.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, this agreement is for a records management consultant. The JCPD and the Geary County Sheriff's Office have upgraded the records management system, RMS, for storing of agency records to the MSP products with Tyler Technologies, which is New World, as well as upgrading the CAD system to the Tyler Technologies enterprise products, and desires Sheriff's Office and Junction City Police Department employees to have technical assistance available for the implementation of this new software. The Police Department seeks approval to enter into an agreement with the Geary County Sheriff's Office and Mr. Justin Drake to contract for technological training and assistance in the operation of the MSP Enterprise New World projects. Funds for the hiring of this consultant will be paid for by civil asset forfeiture. We recommend that you approve this. I'd be glad to answer any questions, and if I can't answer them, I'm sure Mr. Gurman can.
My first question would be the asset forfeiture funds paying for labor. Now, I guess this is a contract, and it
Yes.
is allowed
Yes.
under the asset.
Yes. On this project, we're into about 1.1 million into this project. All have been paid for out of federal asset forfeiture funds. Our last consultant, Sherry Massey, we've had her on contract for the last 2+ years at $100 an hour, and that was all paid by asset forfeiture. And Mr. Drake will be coming in at a significantly less amount, and it will be paid for out of asset forfeiture. We anticipate until we go live that we will need his assistance. And it'll be part-time whenever he's not working at Shawnee County. He pushed the project through. He has more knowledge in that on New World systems than anybody in the state. And quite frankly, about 2 months ago, we were really fortunate to find him. There's a lot of nuances of this program that without having somebody right here in our building that knows about the system, if we didn't have him, it would be pushing this project out and costing us a lot more money. But yes, this is money that we can use out of our asset forfeiture account.
Okay. And the other question would be, is this open-ended? Is there an end date?
Well, I think the end date is once we go live. At least that's my interpretation. And I just learned today that we were hoping April was the go-live date, and Jim might know something different.
They don't have a solid date. What they have to do, what they're waiting on is they have to reschedule trainers to come in before we go live. And that's what the holdup is now for getting a finalized date. They're looking at late April, early May right now is the window they're looking at.
You can project at least a few months after your go live.
Yeah.
I guarantee it.
Yeah, I would probably say he would probably be under contract until probably about the 1st of July, provided that timeline stays, just to help answer questions. I've spoken with him, and he is very adept at the SQL and all of the statutes that we have to manually put in the system. He did all of that for Shawnee County, and as a matter of fact, he's going to be grabbing their information and migrating it in for us.
So the other position we tabled, that person's going to learn from him how to manage the software? Or is that something else?
Part of it.
Go ahead, Jim. Please do.
As Alan said, we've been trying to get an additional IT position for a couple of years. And this person is going to be on site at the police department and be there all day. And that's the issue we're running into now. Mike and I are out doing other things. And when they have a problem with the software, by the time we get there, it's not conducive to getting it flowing correctly. So this person is going to be there, learn the system, learn from him, and basically be the expert, our expert on that software.
Got it.
Yes.
Makes sense.
$30 an hour is good. I'd come to work for that.
That's actually pretty cheap for a contractor.
It's very cheap for an IT contractor. For a contractor, yes, but an IT contractor, you want to go with that one. The acronym LERMS, is that Law Enforcement Records Management System?
That's correct.
LERMS, yes.
I figured I was going to ask that, but I said I'm going to do it anyway. Oh, well.
Okay.
Let's move on.
What's the will of the commission?
Move to approve the consultant agreement with Geary County Sheriff's Department and Justin Drake for the Records Management System project.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
In here.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item this evening is going to be the consideration to accept the Transportation Alternatives Grant from KDOT for the West 8th Street and Eisenhower Drive trail connections and approve the city's match of $91,476.
Madam Mayor and Commissioners, we had a request approval for the City Commission for the Transportation Alternatives Grant from KDOT. What it will do is extend the current trail that we are getting provided by KDOT at the intersection of Rucker Road and 8 West 8th Street. Will go from West 8th Street all the way to the east to Eisenhower Drive, from Eisenhower Drive south to Playground Park, and then through Playground Park, along Eisenhower Drive past Lincoln School, and cross over Eisenhower Drive back to Homer's Pond. We applied for the grant. We were approved by the KDOT for the Transportation Alternative Grant. Our match would be $91,476, which is 20% of the total project, which is $457,380. I'd be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Ray, I had one question, looking at the diagram. When you get down Eisenhower, just where you cross McFarland, is there a reason they don't want to go straight? They're right there at that intersection where they come together, rather than crossing back across Eisenhower to come back down, then cross Eisenhower again to come back to the Homer's Pond area?
Part of the process was try to get them to go through the park, through the Playground Park area, to be able to utilize that area when they do that, instead of just going straight to Homer's Pond. So you have the ability to go to the park or then go to the pond.
Because we have that sidewalk there, that crosswalk already there to come across. You see the kids come down there, and then some of them that are actually going up Eisenhower, they just walk in the street. And when we're doing safe routes, it would make more sense, again, like I say, to come down, just extend that about 200 feet. You get into high-speed traffic going up McFarland, but, you know, they're going fast on Eisenhower already. They're doing 30 miles an hour. It just amazes me, because the people that run across that intersection also. They run down Eisenhower heading north, and they run across that intersection anyway. We see it every evening when the track teams are out, and they cross that intersection, and then they have to run on that, southbound lane of Eisenhower. They're in the street. If we could get that modified, for me, I think that would be a safe route. I wouldn't take away from what we have on the other side, but if they could make that an addition. You see people all the time. I do, particularly heading up that way. They're always in the street because the sidewalk ends.
Commissioner Sands, we were going to, on the one crossing that would go from right across from the Devon Center, we were going to put a hawk signalization, which is for allows bikes and pedestrians to cross. We could also do the same thing down there at 5th and Eisenhower to make that a safe way to get across too.
Okay.
And by being that, it's a signal that a pedestrian or biker would hit, and then automatically flash. We have one. It's not a hawk, but we do have a pedestrian crossing signal at 18th on 18th Street.
Taco Bell, yeah.
Yeah, right
Where
there.
a
We
kid
have
got
one of
run
those. We
over
could put
almost.
one of those in
Okay.
to do that too. But the thought was that this would allow a biker or pedestrian or whoever wanted to go to the park, they could cross there, and then if they wanted to continue on through the trail, they could go around Homer's Pond and back around.
Ray, like any project, design may change from this proposal.
Yes,
We're talking about accepting the grant and the dollar amount that was listed in there, and we're committing these matching funds, plus engineering or design costs, there's some other costs in there, plus design costs. And like with any other project, it'll be studied, and there may be some things that are going, okay, this doesn't make sense, this makes sense. And your comments are excellent, and those are what we'll be looking for as the design phase moves forward. But yeah, let's don't pick the design too far because, you know, I think that there is concerns, and those will need to be addressed at that point in time. And I think, well said.
And getting that much for what we have to pay, our match is not that much to get the project.
20%.
Exactly.
You know, and what's interesting is Mayor Fitzgerald received an email last night, and I responded today about people and what we're completing now in Rucker on 18th from Rucker West to 77, and then with KDOT, and then we're going to add lighting to that too. This lady was looking for a lighted running area so she could go exercise at night, and I think this is part of the whole Live Well Geary County group and everything else, is to provide more opportunities for people to exercise and to get out there, and the lighted trails are important too.
Well, only thing, the only other thing that, and I'm glad that you spoke about the Hawk signal at the Fifth and Eisenhower, because I think already that we should, maybe if we could, take a look at that to add something more to it now, because I have been at that crosswalk more times than not, where the car in the right lane heading south, there's a kid that wants to cross, they start to cross, but the one car in the left lane doesn't see, so it's kind of a, right now, even a dangerous crosswalk for children. And I know a few years ago, a student did get hit at that crosswalk, so I don't know when this is projected to be done by, but maybe we can look at something there in the meantime.
We can do that, Mayor Fitzgerald. We can take a look at that and look at that intersection, see what we can do
I appreciate
for
it, because it
safety.
is kind of, yeah.
Is there a traffic design study scheduled for this?
We have done a Call Valley Engineering, Leon Osborne or Chad McCullough can talk about, there is a talk about a roundabout, which is in the comprehensive plan that we have, the city's comprehensive plan, and they have a design for it. They could answer more questions on that.
Chad, have you guys done a traffic study at this intersection?
We've laid out a roundabout to see how it
Come on
works.
up here.
Better get the pedestrians through there. We haven't done a formal traffic study, that intersection of the pedestrians, but we know that it's a problem. I mean, it was just recently a problem when somebody got hit, so that whole area through there, there's no good place for a sidewalk because of the grades on the west side of Eisenhower, so a roundabout at that location with McFarland would help allow people to get across there, that they're only having to pay attention to traffic coming from one direction, so.
Finishing the bridge on 18 Highway is going to help a lot. Get rid of that extra traffic that's moving through there right now.
Yep, there's a lot more people using it.
That's probably the biggest source of trouble more than anything. But.
Yep. So, and this layout was something that the MPO brought to us. We actually hadn't planned on submitting an application in this round because we had just gotten the $950,000 for the trail that's being built right now and didn't think that we probably had a very good chance. But it was the connectivity of the trail that's being built to the Homer's Pond Trail that was attractive to KDOT, and the MPO came to us with that diagram. We put together a cost estimate at the 11th hour, submitted it, and were pleasantly surprised that it got selected. So there's some tweaks that we've already talked about when we walked it with KDOT that Ray and I had wanted to make some changes from what was on the aerial that the MPO provided, but it's definitely going to be a good project, and there's a lot of areas of need in there, and of course it'll be great. People who really want to walk a long distance can go all the way from Homer's Pond up to the middle school whenever all this is done, and we submitted the project application to KDOT last week, and it would be on the September 2018 KDOT letting. So that's what.
This project would be.
Correct, right. Yep.
You're probably talking construction into 19 then.
Right. We started surveying last week on it. Okay. So we'll start on design here in a few weeks and have to have preliminary plans to KDOT by the end of the year, so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
There be any funds available for the roundabout, since it's kind of part of that?
Well, other than the STP funds that have historically been converted into federal funds exchange dollars.
Okay.
But we'd have to submit an application, we'd have to have a balance in that account.
What you can do, and
trying to figure a way to fund it, not all on our shoulders.
Yeah.
The other options we do have is that, we're just, working, finishing, and Ray may give you a report on the street projects. We've done 1.1 of street projects a year. Do you sometimes say, okay, we understand we've done that, do that, and go, let's breathe a second, let's take 200,000 out or 300,000 out and put it into a safety or a traffic flow concern, i.e. this, and that's something that the commission and staff can talk down the road a little bit. The federal change funds are going to be probably 220,000 a year now. They'll be down because the state's withholding more, but still, those are funds that are there. And I think look at priorities now. We still have many more streets to do, no doubt, but safety and traffic concerns are also And, of course, with the Highway 18 bridge being out right now, there is days I've seen traffic backed up in McFarland in school mornings, almost to Holly, believe it or not, on given days. I mean, not quite every day, but some days all the way to Holly. And so
It's a tough place to make a left turn at the wrong time of day.
you just
definitely.
can't. Yeah. You go south. of
Roundabout would
Spruce.
be a good thing there.
Yeah.
Roundabout, typically 1 to 3 million,
Oh, not there.
because no big land acquisition problems.
Right, yeah. It was, 450, something like that.
Okay,
300 to 500,000.
okay, good.
Did good, Ray.
Okay, thank you.
I recommend move forward with accepting the grant, and then these will all bleed in, but they're great discussion.
I move to approve the transportation alternative grant from KDOT as described.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
None here.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners.
Next item this evening is going to be the consideration to build a new pole barn for the street department by Bowling Construction in the amount of $14,160.12. Mr. Ibera.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, Public Works continues to need more storage space out there at the Public Works facility. We have budgeted in the 2017 budget to build a new 20 by 80 foot by 12 foot tall pole barn for the street department. This would allow us to store crack sealing material or bobcat or air compressor, rollers, trailers, that type of thing. We've already built a pad for it, so it's already set to go. We received one quote for the pole barn, and it was at the price of $14,160.12. We recommend that you approve the 20 foot by 80 by 12 foot pole barn for $14,160.12. I'll answer any questions that you may want to ask.
Is that open on one side?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I move to approve the 20 by 80 foot, 12 foot pole barn from Bolin Construction of Junction City, Kansas, in the amount not to exceed $14,160.12.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
None here.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Next item
Commissioners.
this evening is going to be the consideration of the grant of easement for utility improvements from Craig Royce in the amount of $1,500. Mr. Ibera.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, Public Works is seeking approval for the grant of easement for utility improvements on a 30-foot strip of land on Lot 1 of the Alexander Acres. This piece of property is located in the 1700 block of West A Street. The purpose for the easement would be to relocate the 12-inch main that feeds the Ash Street water tower. That section of line is broken at least 5 times, and the latest has been on October the 7th, and when we did manage to turn it down, we only had 5 foot of water in the towers. The other use would be for getting electrical power that would feed the newly built West A Street pedestrian bike trail pathway for the lights. Currently, the way that it's going, West Star wants to go down Stone Ridge Drive, then across, then back to our transformer back to the east. This would greatly reduce that, and hopefully we could get some savings from West Star by being able to do that. The owner of the property, Craig Royce, has given us permission for this 30-foot easement, and the consideration is to give me $1,500 for the easement rights. I'd be willing to answer any questions you might have.
Move to approve the grant of easement for utility improvements from Craig Royce in the amount of $1,500.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion?
Nothing here.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Next item this evening is going to be the consideration to use Duke's Root Control Incorporated to complete sewer root cleaning in the amount of $31,000. Mr. Ibera.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, Public Works uses various methods to maintain its city sanitary mains, and another tool is to use root control. And there are areas that the city has determined where there's tree roots that cause us an issue as far as sewer backups, and we would like to use Duke's Root Control to do this. They've done this previously in Junction City, and what they have done, we've gone to a point where if we retreat some of our lines right now that they've had currently done a few years ago, that we could get an additional guarantee on those lines. And then we've also added a few more lines to be able to be treated. So we recommend approval for $31,000 to treat these lines.
You're also approving this as a sole source vendor. He has not gone out for bid on this.
Correct.
What was the reason for that?
Because they've treated our lines previously, and we're allowed to get this guarantee on at least 22,000 feet of lineal line for another additional 3 years.
What kind of success have you had with this company?
We've had very good success with them so far.
At $1.41 a foot, that's pretty cheap. That's real cheap.
If you could add that to the memo, though, or to the motion, make sure you add to the motion it's for sole source. The auditors like seeing that.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Nothing here.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Commissioners.
Next item this evening is going to be consideration of change order number 2, increasing costs by $295,121 and adding 118 days of contract time to the wastewater treatment plant improvements Phase 1 project and update of water and wastewater plant improvements Phase 1 projects.
I've passed off to Don Lindman at HDR. You've met him before. He's been here numerous times. One, to update you on the reason for the change orders, and secondly, just some considerable update on both the wastewater project and the water project.
Thank you, Alan. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the commission. As Alan said, want to talk about the change order for the $295,000, but also thought it would be good to kind of give you an overall update status on both the wastewater plants construction projects as well as the water treatment plant construction projects. So we're going to go through each of them, the 2 wastewater plants, both the east wastewater plant, south plant, and then the water treatment plant. And I'll go through where we are currently, where we started, and then go through the change orders and some of the changes that we have in there. On this picture, you'll see we've got a few pictures. The upper right-hand corner is the new dissolved air flotation system that's at the southwest plant. Bottom right-hand corner is the improvements we made to the troughs and the scum system at the clarifiers on the east plant, and on the lower left-hand corner is the well that was being putting in the casing for the water treatment plants. We'll first start off with the east wastewater treatment plant. How I set up the presentation to kind of go over everything when Alan asked me to come was I thought we'd go back from the beginning and just kind of take a look at the items we had in there. If you recall, several years ago now, when I presented in front of you when we were doing the wastewater feasibility as well as the water treatment plant feasibility, we had some key components of projects that we had to do, and we developed them into 3 phases. Phase 1 was gotta have it, Phase 2 is need to have it, and Phase 3 was want to have it and regulatory. And so we started with the Phase 1 improvements. But on the east wastewater treatment plant, we started with that, and as we got near to the end of the design, we were having issues at the plant because the primary intake screen had failed and they were getting rags and other things going through it. And so we added that Phase 2 item, as you'll see on this list when you look at the 3rd item down for the headworks. We added that fine screen and the washer compactor to the system. And that was a Phase 2 item that we pulled into the Phase 1 work. So then the rest of these are all Phase 1 items. And then at the bottom of this is already the approved change order number 1, describing the items that we've done there as a result of that work, which you approved, and I can't remember the date, but that's been approved a while ago already. So the next thing we do is kind of give you just a quick schedule update for those base items that we had, as well as those change order 1 items. All of the items have been completed except for some of the biosolids improvements for the components on the biosolids, as well as the SCADA installation and programming for the east plant, and those are all anticipated to being completed substantially by the 31st of January in 2018. Go back to the southwest plant. Again, we did the same thing here, taking a look at the Phase 1 items that were already in there, and then also the change order number 1 items that were already approved and the status of all those, just kind of describing those items here. Again, those items are all complete, save for the industrial dissolved air flotation device at the Southwest plant. That is anticipated to be completed substantially on the 31st of January as well. In this picture, you'll see a couple of pictures of improvements there. The top one is the industrial screen that was installed, the new one's in place at the plant, and the bottom one is a dissolved air flotation in your clarifiers out at the wastewater treatment plant. And those are part of the items that are complete already. So overall, for the wastewater treatment plant construction improvements for the east and southwest plants, we're approximately 90% complete. We have 3 remaining items are the ones that you saw in there, and that's the east wastewater treatment plant, biosolids and effluent metering, I&C programming, continuing with the dissolved air flotation, getting that started up, and then finalizing the instrumentation and control programming. And this photograph is a picture of the east wastewater treatment plant, and what you see there with the gray equipment and the piping that's on the overhead stanchions is the odor control system that's been installed in there to help reduce the odors and the unsavory flavors that you might smell as you drive past the plant.
I love the way you named that. That's good.
We had a lot of complaints about that for a long time.
Yes, well,
Jim and I
hopefully
first
this
time,
takes
we
care
had a lot
of them and you
people-
haven't been hearing anything.
That ought to help.
Yeah.
All right. So now I will move into the change order number 2 items. I'll discuss this. Change order number 2 is in front of you this evening for your approval. When I'm done with that, I'm also going to discuss change order number 3, which I believe will be in 2 weeks on the 21st for your approval as well. Since I was here, we thought we'd just kind of address it while we're here and cover it all in one fell swoop. But I'll talk about change order number 2, then I'll discuss number 3 for you as well to just give you a heads up of what's coming. Change order number 2, we had a number of different things. If you recall, I talked about bringing in the fine screen, the compact washer into the headworks building. Well, as you bring that in, things start to slowly unravel like a thread on a sweater a little bit. We brought in the phase 2 improvements. We had designed that so that you could bring in a screen in pieces and put it into the headworks. The contractor elected to go with one that was a single piece, and they put it into the headworks, but they were going to put a skylight in there, which they were going to do for fee because it had helped them put that in there. Well, as we got into that, the roofing on that building wasn't very good, and so the roofing had to be repaired. That was part of, I believe, change order number 1. Make sure here, yes. So as we got into that further, then we started making more improvements. We had to make sure we had the lighting in there because the lighting had deteriorated at that time. So the next thing we come to, and that's one of the first items that we have on change order number 2, is lighting improvements in there. Because you have a gas in this area and you have the ability for explosive gases to get up in that area, now you've got to have explosive protection in there. Well, phase 2 also had in it some HVAC improvements which would help improve that, but they didn't get in here because we were trying to solve the rags and other issues going through the plant. So now you start pulling on that thread and it's like, well, now we need to address this now because we're going in and making other improvements because the lighting's not sufficient. You've got brand new equipment in there, you've replaced the roof, and you want to make sure that everything in there is good and can be worked on and taken care of. So we took a look at that and we included the headworks lighting, and that's one of the items in. I'll just show you some more details on that. The next one is primary flow splitter, and that's the flow splitter that divides water to the primary clarifiers, and the gates in that weren't working. They couldn't get them set right to split the flows the way they should. We had originally put that in there, but when the got out started taking a look at below the water and trying to do that in the flow splitter, unfortunately, everything looks good on paper, but when you get into construction, what was constructed and you take the water off of it changes a little bit. So in order to make that work, we went and looked at some improvements that would get the concrete and then the structure revised so that we could get the gates in there and make the flow work the way it's supposed to. A few other items, the biosolids. We were going to be doing improvements in the biosolids, which would mean we have to get into the existing motor control centers. We had looked at those. We thought those were valuable to work. But as they got in and started working on them, they had a couple that weren't working properly. They couldn't get parts. So now we have to improve those sections of the motor control center so that we can make the new equipment work properly. So we need to improve some of those things. Finally, with the primary sludge and the biosolids at the east plant, we replaced those pumps, and we replaced them in kind with what they were, but the conditions were a little bit different, so we need to go in and put some throttling valves in there so they can be controlled properly to meet the flows that come through the plant and make it easier for Viola to be able to operate the plant and match flows with everything else that was going on there. That was not anticipated because we were replacing the pumps as they were. For the Southwest plant, there are a couple of items. One of them was requested. There were some floating storage tanks, which are pictured in the upper right-hand corner of this, that were taking up space that were no longer used. So we were looking to demolition those and provide some additional space because they had some cramped quarters down on that site. That provided them a little bit more room on the site. Also, the clarifiers had to have sludge removed from them. Unfortunately, due to the weather and a number of other things going on there, Veolia was unable to get all that sludge out, so the contractor assisted them in helping removing that sludge. That was part of this change order is all because they couldn't get it done in the time we were looking at. And then finally, making some modifications on the domestic pump that was replaced, again, tweaking the impeller on that to make the flows better match with what was in there because of some changed head conditions. So all of those are the items that add up to the $295,000 change order. The two largest ones in that change order I've got highlighted here. The first one was the lighting in the Headworks building. That was approximately $113,000 because we have to get emergency lighting and other things on there that are explosion proof because of the gases in there. I kind of struggled with this a number of times, and we went back and forth with the contractor, making sure we got it there and revising it to make sure we got it down because our first quotes were a bit higher than this. This will also increase the contract time 118 days to be able to get this work in because it's something they're going to have to continue doing. And it describes just some of the different lights that we have on there, emergency lights and sealed lights for explosion and everything else. The second one was that primary splitter structure. That's the lower structure that you see, the taller one there where we had to make the modifications to make the gates put in. That was approximately $78,000. So those are the two larger ones in the entire contract. And then the other ones that I talked about earlier were smaller ones that add up to the $295,000.
Don, this additional 118 days, the work that's been done already is in operation, correct? A lot of the work that's been done already.
A lot of this has been done and already.
The process is already moving.
Right.
You know, the chemicals that they're
We
using.
have to issue proposed change requests for the contractor to keep moving to keep the work going.
Mm-hmm.
And we come back in and we sit down with Alan to go over those items, but this is bringing it in. The lighting has not been done yet, but they've got those costed out.
But it's not like a brand new building where you're still using a lot of the work we've paid for already.
Correct.
Yeah. It's not like a brand new building where you go, brand new building done. This is.
Right. We're using all those things that were completed and we're just doing additional modifications to bring it up to where we need it to be.
Don, did you have to modify the HVAC and ventilation for that lighting?
We did have some
Room
ventilation,
itself?
but in order to get it down to what they would go with non-explosion proof, you'd have to have a lot of air changes in there, and then by doing that in the winter, you couldn't keep it warm. And so we were going to change some ventilation. We've got some of that taken care of, but to go to all the way non-explosion proof in that building and lower it down, you'd have to do a lot of ventilation changes, and you end up making the building kind of not usable. You just will have the doors open and not have it there. So in order to make it
Or
usable.
as a safety aspect, the VOCs in that room, we have ventilation enough for?
That is the odor control system that I showed you in the earlier picture that's working to help draw those gases and the smells off of that structure.
Okay, but not enough to make the lights non-explosive?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm sorry, I meant to say that. If you have questions as I'm going along, please ask them. So that is kind of what I wanted to talk about on change order number 2. That's the change order you have in front of you for the $295,000, and I think you've got some more detail on the fly sheet that you received with that. The next thing I want to talk about is a much larger change order, and I'm probably presenting this. I don't know if you've briefed anyone on this one to this point yet, Alan, so
We'll do it for the next
please don't shoot the messenger. I set up this presentation for a reason. Remember, I was talking about phase 1 versus phase 2 in this projects. As we went along, going back to that fine screen and compactor that was letting through the rags and the other things, well, those get through to what's called our return-activated sludge and waste-activated sludge pumps, which are shown in the picture in here. They get into that, and they start messing with those pumps, and then they start messing with the valves. Replacing those pumps and the pipes that are shown in this picture were all intended for phase 2. But now you got the screen coming in. Veolia's been working very hard to keep these pumps running, and I spoke with Chris tonight. He's got some spare parts. What did you say you've got coming in? About $9,000 to try to keep them going until we can get these improvements in place so that they can keep the processes rolling. And so what this is basically moving phase 2 up into phase 1 again and replacing those return activated sludge pumps, the waste activated sludge pumps, and a scum pump that they've all been having trouble with as a result of those rags and things that we're getting through, and old age and them just starting to break down. We thought we could hold them off into phase 2, but that screen failure kind of set in motion a number of things within the plant that we're starting to see as we go through construction.
What's the age of those 3 pumps?
Are they 40 years, Chris? Is that? Yeah. So it's not like,
Bit of it.
yeah, it's not like we put them in 5 years ago and they failed already. They've been working to keep them in process as long as they can, and we thought we could get some more out of them. Unfortunately, we can't. So as you start taking a look at those pumps and you start breaking the pipes, your valving's not working to where you can isolate things. You can't break the pipes because the piping, as you can see in that picture, is pretty rusted. They put some lipstick on it to make it look pretty by painting it, but that doesn't necessarily help it. You still got a lot of corrosion and other things in there. The joints are locked together, so you start getting into those issues. It's time then to start replacing it because you've got to break it apart and you start getting damage to the pipe and things like that. We have reviewed this one, excuse me, as it related to our original cost estimate. We've also reviewed the cost estimate that Walters Morgan has provided us for this. We did, when we first got this, before we had any numbers, we did an independent calculation, and they came in within 5% of what we had identified of this. So we are very comfortable recommending this one as well. And so this is one that we would pull out of that phase 2 and phase 1. This is one that Alan will be preparing an agenda item on for next 2 weeks commission meeting and asking for approval of that. And since I was here, he asked that I talk about it tonight as well.
Is that amount still going to be at 500,000, or some of that being done right now to reduce it?
None of that is being done right now. That is something that will extend the time. The plant will still continue working, and that's what Chris has, some of the parts coming to keep the pump limping through while they're doing that, but that will be, and I don't recall the date that the time would be extended for that element. All the elements, I think Alan made this point too, is all the elements are in place, they're working, that are complete, and so now we have substantial completion milestones for portions of the project. And so that would be open for the RASWAS piping as well as the pumps until that is completed.
So those 319 days is in addition to the 118 for the other change order. So 437 more days?
Yes. And part of that is just working within there to try to sequence everything to keep the plant running while you're doing that, because those are part of the critical operation of the plant.
Where's the funding coming from?
Funny you should ask that.
Question.
Okay.
Good question. Perfect timing. Thank you.
I did not put him in as a shill for the presentation. We had originally requested as part of the loan for the wastewater treatment plant, based on the estimates we had for construction for the project, $11 million. Fortunately, you received some very good bids for the project in the amount of $8.6 million. A part of the loan that's also being applied is the construction engineering services that is going to be taken from that loan, as well as construction testing. So I've shown all those up here as well. And then I've included change order 1, 2, and 3. And with those in there, we'll still have $703,000 available from the original loan that was anticipated. And I believe that all.
You're stealing from phase 2.
Yes, we're stealing projects from phase 2. That's correct.
But not exceeding the loan amount on the phase 1.
Right.
And partially was, this was even before Alan, we had decided to pay for engineering design out of the wastewater budget rather than the loan, but the loan application included the design in it. So the design had already been paid for, and that gave you flexibility in what you were going to spend the money on out of the loan. So that ended up being very good positive.
That worked out very well, and I did some quick numbers too after you and I had talked today, Cheryl. We would have been about $100,000 away if we had included that original, over what the requested amount was, if we had included that in here.
You know, I don't like change orders. I hate them as much as anybody, but I think in a project where you refurbish two older buildings, one older than the other, you're now to about 10% of change orders. That's it. I mean, yeah, it'd be less than 10%. And I think that's still pretty good. So, I mean, and again, it's like Don said, it started unraveling, or you thought you could go to this point, but when you got to it, you got to go there 2 foot. I mean, it's just those issues. And again, we're talking a lot of dollars, but it's only 10% or less than 10% of the original bid.
And I'm sure as Veolia can attest, part of the reasons we started with change order number 1 is we started digging on there, and there were lines that none of us anticipated in there that were underground that were not showing up on any of the plans we had. So then you see that, then you've got to start adjusting for those too. And it's,
Well, anytime you're working, any old building or any old structure, you're going to find the problems that you can't see.
right.
Question for you, is that loan right there was that just for phase 1?
The original intent was that was all going to be Phase 1 items, but early on, we had decided that we would not go back and seek refund for the design work and only charge to the loan the actual capital improvements and construction oversight from the loan itself, because it didn't make sense to pay for design out of money, the loan at the time, just for this very reason, because you don't know what you're going to find. And we'd already paid for it, and we'd already raised enough capital and still have sufficient cash carry in the fund based on our original plan that we started way back in 2012.
Yes, and ideally, when we set up that plan with the gotta have it, need to have it in the future, ideally, that was set up because of the phasing in the budget and impact on rates. If we just waited a year, it might have been best interest of the city to go ahead and do phase 1 and phase 2 all at the same time. But at that time, we didn't know where we were, and there was no way to predict that.
One advantage we have, not advantage, this project wasn't quite as bad as the water project. The water project took a year and a half to 2 years to get through KDHE on design. And you remember that discussion we had. When you had put your rate increases in place, starting back in summer of 14, one, you put them in place then because you had cash reserves. We had cash reserves that were not good. So we started building those up in case there is something weird that happens in not only in the building, but throughout our total systems in both water and wastewater. But then secondly, by the water project especially being delayed out of control of HDR and everybody else, just the process, and like in the water plan, I think I told you, and when we started here, we looked at options and ended back to here again. And it's just one of those processes you have, which has allowed us to accumulate the funds and to have them available and move forward with the projects. I mean, it's a win. It ends up being a win-win, and it doesn't push things quite as hard.
And we also split both of the funds through all this so that we would know exactly what we had available for water and wastewater, and there is sufficient funds for operations and maintenance within those funds now, so that it's very logical to continue to spend the money here under the loan and leave the rest alone in the cash carry and cash reserves.
The other thing we're going to find in these projects, and Carrie and I have had this discussion, some of our costs of chemicals and everything else is unknown yet.
Yeah.
I mean, you think you know until you do know. And we're going to go through that process, and Carrie and I have had discussion. This next year is going to be kind of weird just because we're using chemicals we haven't used before, and you think you have it down pat, but we'll know in a year and move forward with it. So it's just that whole process of all communicating between the entities here.
And the good news, I think I heard Don say that this was the last change order that would come this way, ever.
Hey, I just crawled under the podium here.
Don't kill the messenger.
You wish.
We're not going to kill you.
No.
I know, but yeah, unfortunately, I can't fit there. I need a larger box to hide in.
No, he owes me a box of candy for making that design money available.
Thank you. All right, so that takes me to the end of what I wanted to talk about the wastewater treatment plant. And I thought it would be good to just update you with the water treatment plant since I was here as well. This is an aerial photograph that was taken during the initial construction by our contractor. I just liked it. It was pretty, so I wanted to put it on my cover slide. The water treatment plant itself was again set up with those primary phase 1 items, and this is what our base bid was, and it just goes through the different items from the vertical wells, from working on the primary softening basins, working on our sludge control building, repainting the ground storage tank, working on our high and low service pump stations, doing the electrical replacement, adding some improvements to the chlorine system, adding ammonia for disinfection for chloramines, and then just a number of other smaller things like adding new piping out to the lime lagoons so that when Veolia is operating, they can actually get the lime sludge from the sludge buildings out to the lagoons without going through some Herculean efforts. You haven't had to do those lately, but they have been kind of painful. And making sure that we get a new power supply in there so there's safety in the power plant, because right now they don't have a disconnect in there. So those are all kind of the critical phase 1. Got to have it now. I could use the cold stone, love it, like it, got to have it. But, so the next thing we've looked at there, just a quick update on the items that have been approved there. We're working on the roof replacement for the administration building. That's about 70% complete. The site electrical ductwork and conduits is 100% complete. The well drilling and pump tests have been completed on the wells. Those are 100%. And then the temporary ground storage system, which is what you see this picture below the tank if you all haven't been out to the water treatment plant lately. That is the temporary storage that Veolia is working very carefully to make sure their high and low services pumps work without having that large volume of the tank in service while they're doing that.
And they've done a good job. Everybody's worked well together on this project.
And there were a few hiccups putting that temporary storage in. Everybody's worked together to get it working. Veolia has gone the extra mile to try to get all that sequenced so the pumps work. And the contractors worked with them to make sure that would work too. They stayed out that night and helped you guys to get through it, didn't they? So it's been cooperation as a team that helped us get through those things. So it's been very, very good. So can I say change proposal requests instead of potential change orders to talk about the items we're working on here? So some of the things that were in there, again, this ties back to it. For the ground storage tank bypass, there had to be some potholing. We had as-built that showed there were valves out there with T's on it. Couldn't locate them when we got in the field. They did some potholing to try to find them. We had some troubles with the administration building roof. We knew there were some blocked drains on the roof, but we didn't know the extent. We had identified the ones that we knew were blocked, but there also are a number of them that you didn't see pooling on or anything like that were partially blocked. So when the roofing contractor got up there and took a look at it, it was like, okay, we can put a brand new roof on that, but if we don't have roof drains that work properly, we're going to run into some other issues. So that was part of what we looked at there. There were things we couldn't see underneath that. And once they pulled the roof off, they could see some things that we needed to take care of. The ground storage tank, one of the things we have was we had tenting for the tank. The contractor came up with a modified blasting procedure for that they could contain it without the tenting. It's actually a little bit more cost effective for that. So that's actually one that's negative or a little neutral for us. So that was a good thing, but it also helped with the site and some of the other issues out there. We also have a number of these that are under review as well. We have to review them when we get change proposals from the contractor to make sure they make sense, make sure that it wasn't part of their original contract, that they should be taking care of things. There's some little things in the electrical modification on underground work that was unforeseen that we're reviewing right now. One of the things was in the natural gas piping. We had proposed a material to be able to connect up the new piping. The gas company came in and said they prefer HDPE for everything. So that was just corrected based on a gas company recommendation. We added some bollards out there. When we start looking at where everything lays out, there's trucks coming in. I know Veolia was concerned about trucks and what might hit the new equipment, so we're adding a couple of bollards out there. When we got in, started looking at the chlorine piping, it was kind of messed up a little bit more where we thought we could make the connections. There was a couple transitions from different materials, so rather than just make the connections there, we're going in and cleaning up those materials, making them one material. So we're looking at some cost improvements there for the chlorine piping, which I'm sure if you talk to Kerry, he will be thankful that that's going to get improved because it's been a concern of him for a while. Ground storage tank, temporary storage modifications. We added some additional storage there to give Veolia a little bit more cushion in operating. So there were some concerns there because there wasn't quite enough there. And when they started doing some of the testing before we got out there, they asked that they could get a little more storage out there. So we added some of that. We had raw water well 20 and some of the decant lines there. We had some reductions, so we're looking at getting a credit on some of that. Admin roof building, there was an unforeseen condition because when they started taking the roofing off of there, they were thinking the whole roof was flat, but there was like a 2-inch gap where it was a different thing. So now their baseboard to get all the lines to flow and everything was different, so they had to get some additional to add insulation to get all the slopes correct on that. That was nothing anybody could anticipate until they pulled it off and looked at it. And then just some containment modifications, and this is a phosphate here. We were looking at having containment there, and the contractor took a look at it and said we can't quite do it like that, so we're going to have to modify a couple of things to get it done to make it work. And that's under review as well. As far as the water treatment plants itself, we're about 19% complete. We don't have final completion on everything because they're really getting out there in the field and starting to do that. A lot of what they've done so far is shop drawing submittals to make sure that they've got the right pieces of equipment and things that'll be delivered for when they do get out there on the site. We're still on schedule for substantial completion in May of next year, as well as final completion in July, pending any change order for days requests. I haven't got a total tally on that as of yet. What we've shown in this pictures here, that upper right-hand photograph, is the lime building's pumping structure, and that's the piping that needs to be replaced, as well as getting pumps in there so we can pump the lime solids back out to the lagoons when they're done. And then the lower left-hand picture is the low and high service pump stations, where they're going to be replacing all of those pumps and then modifying what's on the right-hand portion of the picture, which is the MCCs and the controls for the pumps. Those will all be replaced as well.
Don, what kind of shape is that stairwell in?
The stairwell itself, while it looks a little corroded, is in decent shape. There's nothing really structurally wrong with that we could see in there. The bigger issues was all the piping and everything like that. There was some outside surface corrosion on that, but nothing that made it structurally unsound.
Don, I know, well, I talked about the water treatment plant, but we had other improvements. Can you talk about the 2 new wells?
Yeah, so I glossed over that earlier. We put, part of the wells project, we put in 2 new wells, and those wells actually performed very well during well testing. When we originally designed them, we were hoping to get about 1,000 gallons per minute out of them. I think one of them is up at 1,300 gallons per minute, and the other is at 1,400 gallons per minute. Do you recall that? Is that the right numbers, Kerry? I believe those were. Yeah. So we're almost getting, with those 2 wells in addition, we're almost getting another 1 million gallons per day out of them. That will help plant for treatment capacity and everything else. In addition to that, we're also taking 3 other wells and we're connecting them up to SCADA so that plant staff can operate those from the building itself and don't have to go out and turn wells off and on, which has been a struggle for them in operating the well fields. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, and also another part of the water plant project, which I think we've talked about, is we are going to get backup generation there now.
Oh, I totally glossed over that.
At the
when I
plant.
went through that, yeah.
At the plant and also on
There'll be,
the 2
there'll be
wells.
2 standby generators for the plant itself, and then generators on the 2 new wells as well. Thank you very much.
And they're all natural gas, that way you don't have to worry
And
about
those-
fuel and getting them there and everything else.
I kind of went through those a little quick. Those are listed on this page down there for site for the standby generations on the last line, and then also for the wells as well. And that, oh, I I have to go to my final slide, which Cheryl will appreciate. And that is our loan fund on this one. For this project, we had originally requested $13 million for the loan fund. We also had a grant from EPA of $242,000 to work on the chloramination for the ammonia at the plant. Our construction bid came in extremely low from our original estimate of $8 million. And again, we have construction testing on there for $25,000 and construction engineering for the 1.1. In addition to that engineering, it's also shop drawings, construction admin, but also on-site inspection for that. And that's full-time inspection for the project. And we have not had any change orders, so hopefully we'll have a large amount of this left at the end of this project.
We, again, on this project, early on had submitted the application to include the design engineering, but we did not request for reimbursement since our cash flow was sufficient to cover the design costs. And so that's why you'll see the additional money that's available for further construction or Phase 2 items.
Yes.
That was simply pay me now with less money, or pay me later and pay interest.
Well, that was fortunate because Cheryl had things in place before we got here already looking to bring money in to address some of these improvements. And when we got here, you also got outside consultant to help you with the budget too, which has
Right.
helped, I think, get you where you are right now.
And
to where
that
you're
was
in
all
better-
part of the original plan, yeah.
Yep.
But it didn't make sense to pay for design services that we'd already absorbed in the budgets. And since we had sufficient cash flow and had still additional reserves now, we left that for
What would change the rate?
unforeseen change orders or items that, just like this, where you go back to KDHE and request part of Phase 2 to be paid out of that loan.
That's why we changed the rate structure early on to start stockpiling money.
Exactly.
We need
That's
it.
all of what we had over a 5-year period is falling into place.
That was part of the plan.
It only takes 5 years to become an overnight success.
Right. Today's the day.
There is logic to good planning.
That's all I have unless you have additional questions.
We need to consider the change order, please.
Thank you.
Move to approve the consideration of change order number 2, increase the cost by $295,121 and adding 118 days to the contract time for the wastewater treatment plant improvements Phase 1 project and updated water and wastewater improvements Phase 1 projects.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Nothing here.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Next item this evening is consideration to sole source purchase of Halmetro extrication tools from Conrad Fire Equipment Incorporated in the amount of $54,000. Chief Johnson.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. What we have before you is, in 2014, the city acquired a lease purchase for $1,203,000 for purchase of apparatus and equipment. We are at a point now where we have about $54,000 left that has not been spent on equipment out of that loan. Our request is to go with a sole source purchase with Halmetro tools from Conrad Fire Equipment. The reason for it is that the tools that we have in service right now, we have one set of tools left that is well over 20 years old. And it's a mixed set of tools of what we call Hearst brand tools and Tech Rescue tools. We have a blended system there. By going with Halmetro, which we have on our other vehicles, we can speed up our extrication process, no delays, and setting up another piece of equipment with another pump, those type of things. So what we're asking is not to exceed $54,000, but the equipment that is in the packet is what we are looking at purchasing. And this is a standard set of vehicle extrication tools that we carry on our trucks, so that we have the same tools on each fire apparatus. Having that in play allows us to manage our scene more effectively and hopefully not have anything go wrong. If you have any questions.
You say the current equipment's 20 years old or older?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We do know the Rams from the Hearst tool are well over 20 years old.
Will you just keep the old equipment for backup or sell it, or what will you?
We might, I have talked with Public Works, and they have expressed interest in a couple of the tools for specific use there. Not really life safety, but it may be something they can use to lift something or pry something that has gotten stuck or something like that. But some of these tools I wouldn't recommend using for life safety because of their age. Once they hit that point, getting parts to repair them are difficult. So it's just one of those things that we have to look at. We could auction it off, but we're not looking at getting more than, for the whole set that we're ordering at a 20-year, maybe $1,000. Because they are small Honda motor pumps and things like that that take a lot to keep running once they get some age to them. And the hydraulics, that's the other thing, is finding the oil. Manufacturers are now going to EPA-approved oils. This device doesn't have EPA-approved oils. It has standard hydraulic fluid. So it's a little complicated, but we will look at what we have and see what we can do to get the best out of it.
Thank you.
Chief, by buying this set of Humultra tools, does that now bring all of our apparatus stocked with Humultra tools?
Yes, sir.
So if something breaks or fails, you can borrow a pump from another
Exactly.
apparatus to keep things working?
Exactly. All of them are the same type with what's called core technology, which is one hose instead of two. All the tools are interchangeable, so we don't have to worry about contaminating hydraulic tools. Humultra tools uses a mineral oil to where the other tools use hydraulic fluid. So we can, and also for the firefighters, it makes it easier because they don't have to think about, okay, how do I start this? Or how do I hook this up? Am I doing this? It's one process. So we speed up our time to save lives.
I move to approve the sole source purchase not to exceed $54,000 to Humultra extrication tools from Conrad Fire Equipment.
Second.
Dinner.
Third.
I have a motion, a second, and a third. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving right along. Next, going to roll into our commissioner comments and committee reports, and we'll start out with Commissioner Mike Ryan.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a couple items.
Never mind, we'll pass you up. Go ahead.
We proclaimed that November is Veterans Month, and we all know, everybody in this room knows a veteran. And, you know, I was thinking earlier today, it doesn't seem right to make one day a day to say thank you to the men and women of our country who have put their lives on the line to protect our freedoms and give us the rights that we enjoy. I had the opportunity to thank a couple of these gentlemen tonight for their service, people that I didn't know, and they looked astonished that somebody said thank you to them. That's something that we all ought to do more of. The other thing, in the news, we had vandals who toppled headstones in Highland Cemetery. I hope that that's a high priority with the police department to find the culprits who did that. You know, the disrespect shown to the people and the families by that action, maybe if they wanted the privilege of constructive community service, maybe mowing and taking care of the cemetery for a number of years, maybe they would learn a little respect and not desecrate property in the future. That's all I had, other than the fact that Commissioner Sands is going to cover the MPO meeting for me tomorrow, and I will be going to the animal board. The MPO meeting got moved a week due to scheduling for some of the other stuff, is why it's happening tomorrow instead of the following week. Thank you, Jim.
Not a problem.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Ryan. Commissioner Sands?
This weekend, we're talking veterans at the C.L. Hoover Opera House is our local Junction City, Gary County Veterans Day ceremony, and it's going to be a well-put-together ceremony. Again, it's at the Opera House Saturday at 11 o'clock. There's a couple of things that are leading up to it. Letters from home. Those are, you want to talk about veterans. When you hear these letters from home, or letters home, and then the other film that's coming, there's A Few Good Men. Those are pretty special. There's some folks I've talked to. I didn't go to Vietnam, but there's folks that I've talked to that have never brought up stories from Vietnam, and you never know when they're going to come out. Sitting around drinking tea, and this gentleman just came over and he sat down, and we had spent a couple days together. And he said, I got to tell you something. And he just had to get it off his chest. This was 40 years in the making. 40 years. And when he finally told me what happened, he says, I just didn't know how to explain it. And he said, I just felt that you could probably listen. That's all I needed you to do was listen. That's a special time. I want to congratulate all those who ran for office, those that pardon me a second. I've lost some good friends. I've lost a lot of good friends. And Veterans Day is a day that I think about them. Thank you. I want to congratulate all those who took the courage to run for city commission, school board, elected positions in and outside the community. From a gentleman that came to one of our candidate forums, he saw the quality of people that we had in our city. He said, my goodness, I wish we had one person of this caliber in our community. He says, you have great candidates, wonderful candidates. He says, any one of them would do a great job in my community. So I wanted to get that out to folks just to let them know. We accept everybody who applied, everybody who tried. You did great. And I don't know what the numbers look like, but I don't think the city's going to be in any trouble when the few of us have stepped down. I think we're actually going to surge forward with the new candidates. They'll come in with some new energy. If you need us, we'll be around. But Madam Mayor, that's everything I have. Just come to the place, support your community, and come to the Veterans Day. I'm actually in town this Veterans Day, and it's going to be a pretty good one of my old division sergeant majors, and my neighbor's going to be the MC. Some other stuff has been added in. We should have a good program. Come out and check it out. It's free. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. Commissioner McAllister?
I just had a couple things. I wanted to say congratulations to those individuals that ran for elected office. Preliminary results are in. And the preliminary results for the school is in as well already. I don't know if anybody's got that information yet. But some very important elections were up this year between the city, the school board, and the school issue. I think in the long run, you will see a good commission, and you will also see some changes in this community for the positive. I'm not going to announce anything because it's just preliminary, but congratulations to those folks that have stepped up to the plate and are going to take on the important business of the city, the school, and the new school as it is. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Vice Mayor Landis?
Hope everyone got out and voted today. Some guys were talking about is Veterans Day is coming up, and we honor our veterans by voting, appreciating the rights that we've been extended because of their service. I'd like to tip my hat to the mayor and the great project that she's done this past over a year, writing all these Big Red One stories. I mean, I don't think anybody around has as much energy as Phyllis Fitzgerald does.
Nobody.
I don't think you can put 10 people in a room to have that much energy. But to do everything else that she does in town, and then also to write these great stories that we get to see every week about soldiers that have decided to live around Junction City, it's really kind of fun. You know, what's in this week's one? This should be interesting. Well, I know this person. So it's been a fun thing that she's done that. So Phyllis, thank you very much for everything that you've done.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add just a couple items here. I too would like to thank, all the veterans of our community, our veteran families. A large part of our community is veteran-based, and we do appreciate not only the veterans, but all the citizens of our great city of Junction City. I'd also just like to say thank you to all the candidates or all the persons that had an interest to want to be an elected official or be an elected school board, that was wanting to get a new high school. Just the team that worked on that project. I just thank you all for taking that step forward, because that's what it takes to make things happen, is to step up to the plate and want to be a part of it. And I'm pretty sure every one of those folks that ran for election or have worked on the steering committee for the school and everything, you had a passion and a desire to want to do that. So that's why you stepped up to it. So congratulations to the folks that are going to end up in those positions. Just like to say, add a little bit to what Commissioner Sands said. Please, Saturday, November the 11th, 11 o'clock, Opera House. It'll be a good veterans program that day. And then Sunday, if you're not busy, at 1 o'clock is when we're going to decorate the downtown for the holiday season, and we can use some volunteers to come and help. The more volunteers we get, the less amount of time it takes to get it done. So 1 o'clock.
Where are we meeting at?
We're going to meet on 7th Street at the Junction City Tattoo, the Chicago restaurant area, right around in there. They'll have a table set up and everything. So please come out and give a hand. And the last thing I'll say is thank you to all the volunteers and great people of our community. So with that, Mr. Dinkle, do you have anything?
Of course I do. Not to disappoint, of course. It looks like finally we're getting the Bluffs Fire from April 8th, that issue settled. The city will be receiving a check, hopefully end of this week, first next week, for the 15% of the total loss of the building. And of course, we'll hold that in an interest-bearing account until the building is removed, and I'm sure they'll move forward. There's always a lot of controversy about the 15% holding thing, but basically, we're going to be holding basically $500,000, which means that hopefully it expedites the process of getting it taken care of. One of the problems with this building is it had not reached the 70%. There was a lot of decisions being made to total the building, and so with financing and everything else. But moving forward with that, and I know there's been some questions, but that's been a long process. It was a different insurance company than we dealt with a year ago on the first fire. So, and you have to teach people, and I think every insurance adjuster in the state of Kansas knows the cities that have the 15%. You contact the state, and it's all taken care of. But when you're dealing with with adjusters from San Francisco and everything else. It's just a game that to work with. Do want to recognize Jim Gurman. Jim was he's going to hate me for this, but that's okay. Jim graduated last week and a half ago from the Kansas Leadership Program he went to on his own this last year. So congratulations to Jim.
Go, Jim. I'm going to graduate from high school.
All done?
I'm all done now.
All right, Ms. Logan?
I don't have anything.
Ms. Beatty? Ms. Settles? Nothing. Chief Breesy?
I'm coming.
Okay, you're done. Chief Johnson? Oh.
Commissioner Ryan, we are working on that. I've got all of my detectives. They were out there. We hope to make an arrest soon. And, I saw the news coverage on the news tonight, and they gave some really good coverage, and they were empathetic of what happened here. And I immediately thought of the family and friends that have loved ones out there. And I was also appreciative that back 6 months ago, you let us put cameras on our memorials on Heritage Park, just so if something like this ever happened, we wouldn't have to be wondering who's responsible. Also, thank you so much for showing that video. That was a real surprise sitting back there. So whoever came up with that was really nice. I hope the public that's watching this can go to Facebook, go to our Facebook page, JCPD, or go to WIBW. It was Salute the Badge. It was on last night at 10 o'clock. They did a fantastic job, and when all this bad stuff that's happening around the country, to see something uplifting about our department, and one of our officers, Officer Hagan, came to our agency 2.5 years ago, and he is an extraordinary young man. He served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and his last year, when he wasn't, deploying on missions, whenever there was a casualty, he got on a helicopter with the commanding general from Fort Riley and flew to where that soldier was, and he played taps. And the stories that he has is incredible. Commissioner McAllister, you asked me 21 days ago about cell phones, and so I'm coming back here to report to you on that. And over the last 20 days, some statistics. In the last 20 days, the police department has responded to 1,618 calls for service. Out of that, we've arrested 120 people. We've wrote 465 citations. We've written 56 hard citations for people on cell phones and 7 citations for people texting. And so we do that in our spare time when we're not going from call to call to call. But so I think some of the statistics that I put out to the media is we've written over, I believe it was over 200 and some tickets a year since we started in 2014 on cell phones. So we haven't forgot about it. And I appreciate you bringing that to us. And if you ever have something that you want us to get on and have some more enforcement because you're hearing or seeing it, please get with me and my guys will jump right on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Breesy.
You still have the speed trailer?
Yes, we do.
Okay, we'll talk.
Tell me where you want it, it'll be there.
Thank you.
Chief Johnson? Mr. Ibarra? Mr. Lazier? Mr. Gurman?
Nothing, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Mr. Peterson?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Osborne? Okay, thank
Move
you.
to adjourn.
Can I have a motion to adjourn? Okay,
Good night.
any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Okay, thank you. Have a great evening, y'all.